You're listening to Opacity, a podcast about working in design. Good morning, Tom. How are we today?
Good morning, Craig. I'm splendid. How are you?
Good. I got my fresh cup of coffee. I recently got a coffee grinder, so I get my whole beans. I grind my beans. I do my nice Chemex pour over. You know,
Oh, very fancy.
2 times a day ritual.
Nice. I saw you've collated like a spreadsheet or a Notion doc or something of all the coffee suppliers, haven't you? Local coffee suppliers or something like that.
Yeah, the kind of Irish-based coffee roasters or coffee suppliers or whatever. But yeah, more like local ones. So yeah,
very good.
Yeah, that's for myself, just because yeah, I mean, there's a ton of them. There's a rich kind of coffee activity in Ireland that is something I didn't expect when moving here.
You're expecting shamrocks and
the shamrocks and tea with milk and all that.
Tea with some like
expect
turf floating in the
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not all the quiet man. So yeah.
No, yeah, the hipster coffee culture is real.
Oh, it is. That's
strong. So yeah, I've been trying to kind of recreate some of that at home. Like I always was a Chemex guy, but I've got like my thing of coffee and I've got my beans, and then I have a few different varieties, and I sort of put the label into the beans to basically say what's the word?
It's on the menu.
What's being brewed? Being brewed like these days or something. I'm thinking about going all out and putting like a menu on the board with some varieties, and it's just to go. It's just an activity. Just to make it.
It'll make your workspace look interesting as well.
Yeah, got my little cafe. Yeah, just a cafe workspace. I did actually get a chalkboard, like this adhesive chalkboard for the wall, which is great. Seen other people doing that, so we've got our meal plans for the week. So all of our meals we want to cook and things to do, big things to get done this week. And then important for me, like things to know. So as an American in Ireland, things like temperature conversions, or like if you're cooking or baking, like measurement conversions, which are always problematic. So I have the conversions up there. So 350 degrees Fahrenheit equals 176 Celsius. So I know what to bake, put my oven at, or like 1 US cup is I know it's 8 ounces, but 236 milliliters or something. So I think I'm actually probably wrong on it because cups vary, but
yeah.
Anyway, so
good stuff.
That's my exciting life.
Sounds practical. It sounds very exciting. It sounds thrilling, really.
Exciting.
Yeah. But I guess like what you're doing here is, organizing your life and creating moments for yourself as well. This is something you can look back on.
Ooh.
It's a nice segue.
It is. Well, actually, this is 100% related to what we want to talk about today, because the idea of memory and what we remember about times, and we'll get into it. But there's a book called The Power of Moments, which some of you may have heard of. I read probably last year at some point and really enjoyed it. Definitely recommend the book. But part of what's kind of, I think it's probably towards the beginning of the book, is this idea of memory and how do you create memories, and what is like memorable if you look back on a period of your life. And I think we all have experienced, since March or whatever, or just this past year has been like it's gone by so fast. It's already the end of November almost, and it feels like it was just March the other day. And that they talk about how also later in life, it feels like it speeds up because there's not as much like memory creation. Like your life gets more in a routine. It's the same day in, day out. So you're not creating new memories. And so it just feels like it's flying by. So that is exactly what I'm trying to do, is break things up and make activities at home to make.
Yeah.
Oh, that was the time I went all in on hipster coffee culture in my kitchen. But like, yeah, so career wise, it's the same.
Yeah,
same kind of idea.
That's interesting. I haven't read the book now, but I have some thoughts on this kind of thing in general, just from life, I suppose, my own personal experience. So maybe I haven't technically thought about it and categorized it and stuff in the same way that the book would. But with memory, you don't know, but I imagine this year will be pretty memorable for people. Like assuming this is a change next year, it's kind of unforgettable, really, isn't it? I mean, you might not remember all the nuances of all the things that happened, but a lot of things have happened this year that are kind of feels now like it'll be hard to forget it.
It may feel memorable, but I would say I think the repetitive nature and the lack of change, like we're all generally in the same four walls every day. We're not even going to work and seeing different people or seeing, you know, some weird people in the street or whatever that's, you know, create little memories for us. Like we're just seeing the same few faces every day.
Yeah.
The same walls, the same things, the same whatever. It's all the same. Like
so one big memory.
What's breaking up the days?
It's a memory of one big day.
Yeah, I think it's like, remember, 2020 was the year that everything was fucking terrible. Yeah. But like, who knows? Maybe 2021 will be worse, and 2020 will be like the last, you know, moment of peace or whatever. Yeah. But anyway, so don't want to go down that route.
Yeah. So, so what kind of stuff? Like, what are some of the main things from the book, like that you'd like to cover?
I think it might be interesting as a little experiment here to ask you, like, close your eyes, Tom.
Okay.
Get in a zone here. Like thinking back, you know, when you, I guess, go back to where you started working. You started the grind, the daily grind of work. You know, even before design, go deeper. Deeper.
You're trying to hypnotize me here.
and think about, like, what are the moments that stand out? Like, what jumps out from your career? Like, are there any specifics or any kind of general things that come to mind?
Yeah, I think there are milestones that are hard to, or, you know, easy to remember. So stuff like, you know, going to college, graduating from college, the interviews for the first job that I had, and then, you know, even some things like that, or just like my first presentation on my own, which was terrifying and didn't go well. So that's kind of something that kind of just pops into my brain every time I'm feeling pretty good about myself. You know, you get one of those things in the back of your brain going, hey, take it down a peg, because remember that time that you messed up? What other stuff? Yeah, it's a good question. There are lots of things, like interesting projects that I worked on. I'm kind of having to think back now. When I try and recall them, I can go into more detail. I can remember the nuanced detail, but it's kind of like there's some highlights that you can kind of like recall, and then when you really think about them, you can start remembering some details, or think you can. But are you looking for the specifics of those details right now?
No. I think even what you said there is great. I mean, you mentioned milestones, big things like graduating college, so these like big high points. You mentioned some low points, like a presentation that didn't go well. You mentioned like first things, like the first time, same thing with the presentation. The first time doing a presentation and it also didn't go well. Like, so I assume that's a super memorable thing that will stick with you for probably most of your life. Yeah. Yeah. So the book talks about, I guess, three things: is times of transitions and change. So, you know, like the starts and the ends. You know, the time you got your first job, or maybe the time you ended that job you hated. Whatever, those kind of transition moments, maybe the time you moved from something else into design, like that kind of period of life. Low points that you wish you could forget, like just things that were terrible. You know, if you ever got fired, if you ever got in an argument with a boss, whatever, all those kind of things, or like had some traumatic experience. Obviously, those things stick with you. And then high points, like just stuff that you felt really high on, like, you know, you got praise from somebody that you didn't expect, or you know, you had some project that was wildly successful and you didn't expect it, you know, those kind of high points. Like, so those are kind of the three buckets that they talk about in the book, that make memorable professional experiences, but really any kind of experience.
Yeah, that's interesting. When I hear that type of stuff, and when I think about this kind of thing, like obviously we're talking about work related stuff there, right? Or well, it's work/life achievements, right? Like I feel the same way about life in a way. Like, so say things like that, you have milestones, and you know, you might meet a partner, and you know, all that type of stuff. You might get married, you might have kids and stuff. These are all high points, you know. But then having kids, I notice it a lot, right? Because if you've got especially young kids and you meet someone, a relative that you haven't seen in a while, the first thing they say is like, oh, they've gotten so big, they look so different. And you're kind of like, oh yeah, kind of, but you're there with them every day, right? So you see it, you don't notice the incremental change because it's just happening in front of your eyes. So even if I look back at photos of the kids, you know, when they were much younger, I kind of like, I can't remember they looked like that, you know. I don't remember them being that size or, you know, acting that way. And I think that's something that I also feel in work as well, right? Because you're doing stuff day to day, you're pushing things forward, but it's a slower pace. It's almost like a growing child, you know. So it's kind of like the progress is being made, but it sometimes takes, you have to step back and look at a snapshot of what it was like before, and where it is now, almost like a photograph of like, here it was last year, here it is this year, and then you can kind of appreciate how far things have come along. And I think that's something that that I don't do very well. I don't always kind of like celebrate those little victories when they happen as well. Just kind of like keep on going. All right, yeah, let's move on. There's always something new to do. But I do think that feels, I equate the two. And I've like even recently in work week, there's a big kind of milestone in work, and I noticed it because I'm relatively new. I'm there about a year and a bit, maybe a year and a half now in the company. And I noticed it because it was a big change from where we were and where we are now, but we're all very busy. So there was a photo that I kind of looked back, I just started thinking about and looked back over some of the workshops and stuff that we had initially. And I just shared it around to the team, and I was like, can you believe this was a year ago? Like, it's very easy to forget where we are now, but like, this is where we were before, and here's where we are now. So well done, you know.
Yeah, this should be like an annual like collection of screenshots of just like put in the folder, like this is the 2020 roundup of where we are now, and then review that at the end of the year just for fun. Be like, look where we were, like look at look what our design system looked like, look what our this thing, look what our UI was like. Yeah, you know, anything, and just like look where we were a year ago, and appreciate kind of the change that have come in. Yeah, because you do forget, like you're just in the moment, you're not thinking about it, you don't see all the changes, the day-to-day stuff, and then you realize, oh, we've actually done a shitload this period. Yeah,
totally. I think you know, like I use Google Photos and stuff, and that's quite good at like reminding you. I think Facebook does it as well, like they remind you of memories and stuff. And it sounds like, you know, they can be hit or miss, but it's actually quite an interesting idea where it's kind of basically like, look back 7 years ago, and here's what happened. This happened this day 7 years ago. And you can kind of go, I completely forgot about that. Or, you know, sometimes it's a mixture of results. Sometimes it's just kind of like, oh, whatever. But sometimes you might see some go, wow, that was 7 years ago. I can't believe that. You know,
I love that. That's one of my favorite things from Google. Well, yeah, I don't know. I like the photos. Like it's a fun thing. But yeah, sometimes it's like, oh, 15 years ago, here's a photo. It's like, God, 15 years is.
I know, it's scary. It's also scary, yeah.
But, but it helps you come to terms with where you're at.
Yeah.
So I guess to focus on this topic a little bit more. So, you know, thinking about memories, thinking about these memorable moments in our careers, it made me think a little while back, and I wrote an article about this that we'll link to in the notes here if anybody's interested, kind of to dig a little deeper in this. But I was thinking about this idea of moments, and obviously, like, you can use this in different ways. I was thinking about it in terms of the impact that designers can have on an organization, thinking about this moment creation. And that's sort of, I mean, a lot of people talk about design impact, and it feels to me, not that any of the conversation out there is necessarily wrong. I think it's just a spin that I try to take with this. It's a bit different. And the general conversation I see out there is the impact, like a designer's impact always kind of ends in like impacts on a product or impacts on a user experience or whatever. It's very kind of like a tangible end result that you're trying to get to, and which I think is fine and obviously important and 100% valid. What I was thinking with this idea of moments is how designers can have impact, like in the now. I know we've talked about this before, but in the journey. You know, how do you have an impact on yourself and your own career? How do you impact your team? How do you impact other teams that come into contact with you as an individual or with your design team? And how thinking about creating memorable moments could actually drive kind of more organizational impact across teams. Like, how can you impact an engineering team by creating some defining moment for them? Or how can you impact, if you manage somebody, how can you impact that individual through creating a defining moment for them? So it's really kind of I guess more of an organizational thing than a product thing, and making that organization stronger through creating just enjoyable, like you know, you want things to be memorable. You don't want work is, I think, by default kind of bland, right? Like you go to work every day, you sit, we used to sit in meetings, now we sit in Zoom calls, which is even more bland. It's repetitive. Open the same things, look at Slack, open Figma, do the work, like check your list, go to Jira. All those kind of things like are repetitive. So how can you as a designer, and designers are, I think, well suited for this, because especially those who are kind of, like to facilitate workshops and do things like that, you're well suited to think about creating experiences essentially for coworkers and for other people at your organization. So that's kind of the angle I was thinking about impact as it relates to moments.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think I'm just thinking back, and as you were saying, there's some experiences that I've had maybe that would tick this box, not necessarily like driven by me, but similar to what you're talking about here. So I think some people are more people focused than others. So I think some people are more suited to do this type of thing, to be the kind of the agent of moments or whatever. You get talk about agents of change and stuff, right? So some examples that I can remember are like just people who are very people focused and making sure they're bringing the team together and like celebrating things and having like non-standard days. Like a creative day or something like that, where you basically just don't do work and you do things that are creative and then you share it with the team and that kind of thing. And also remember kicking off on a big project that we were working on, the same project that I mentioned earlier, where all the Scrum team got together. We had like a basically 3-day kickoff where we all just got to know each other. You'd kick off, you'd kind of check in the morning and kind of say, you'd give a new piece of information about yourself. Hey, I'm Tom, and my favorite album is this. Or hey, I'm Tom, and if I could be anywhere in the world, or if I could be doing anything at all right now, it would be this. Or if I wanted to go on holiday, my dream holiday is this thing, right? So it's kind of like, it can kind of sound tedious, but it's actually really good, because like, say the music, for example, someone else will mention like an album, and I listen to kind of a niche type of music, and someone else mentions like loving this album, and I was just like, so there's a connection straight away, right? Whether he knows it or not, he's saying something that I resonate with, and there's this invisible connection between the two of us, even though we haven't talked about it yet. I think some people are just really good at that, and they tend to be more people-focused type of person, in my experience. Now, I'm not saying that you just got to rely on those people to do all that. We all have a part to play in this. So are there any examples that you can think of that are any things that you've done, say, for example, that feel like they tick this box of what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think one thing that stands out in a previous workplace was it was actually before I read this, but it was, when looking back, it was purely moment creation. There was a transition going on in the company. There was some kind of shifts, leadership shifts that happened. There was sort of a shift in the not kind of a pivot of the company, but a shift in focus of the company. And there's different ways to roll that out. Like you can just roll it out and be like, one day, send an email to all staff. This is the new stuff. Be aware of it. Thank you for joining us on this wonderful journey. Send. Like, that is the opposite of obviously creating a defining and memorable moment. So what we did was plan an event. We planned a day. It was a day we brought in remote, staff members from outside the company, outside the country to come in. We had a whole day of activities, a day of planning, a day of kind of fun, like much more interactive than we were normally. And we had kind of a party around it too. Like, we created this whole, I think it was like a 2-day thing, all around this transition with fun presentations from different people at the company. So it was this whole thing, and I hope that was a memorable experience for people. Yeah. I don't know if it was. I don't have any data to prove it was, but it was memorable for me as one of the people kind of helping to put this together. Yeah. But it was very people focused. It was focused on this kind of mission change, kind of, in a way of like, we're going in this direction. To make that direction successful, we need people to be on board, and to get people on board, let's make something interesting. Let's not just do it the way that it's always been done. And, it was a relatively small company, so it was relatively easy to do that. So that's one that stands out. That obviously took a little bit of investment, but even thinking about myself and like what other people have done that have made things memorable for me, like it can be really light, it can be really simple. It can be in an all hands meeting, somebody mentions you by name and calls out something that you contributed to, like that. That little thing, like literally one sentence, can stick with people. Like you can remember. Like I'm amazed, like single sentences that I remember from years and years ago. If somebody said this, and it's like it's lodged somewhere in my brain, like, and that could be for good or for worse. Like it can be, it can go both ways. But like, so these can be like little teeny tiny things, or they can be big, grandiose. Fly everyone to Cancun for spring break. Do people still do that?
We don't do that over here, but it sounds great. If someone wants to fly me over, that sounds cool. When everything's died down. I think that like that stuff is resonating with me, and I do take I think it's a good approach. Especially if something's big change, if a big change is happening, then it makes sense to make an event of it, right, and get everyone on board and stuff. But maybe I think a lot of stuff that happens day to day can be something you can't make a big deal of everything, right? Because then everything's a big deal and you're taking people's time. But if there are significant things, or there are milestones, or like celebrating success or kicking something off, say that example that I gave of this kicking off with the scrum team, like I got to know those team and stuff. If that didn't happen, we would have got the job done okay, right? But it wouldn't have been as seamless, because we have all these things to talk about now. As we kind of know each other a bit better and stuff. So I thought that was a really good way of kicking it all off. Everyone on the same page as well. We kind of said, like, even went through exercises of saying, what's our mission, and like how do we want to work together? What are our values as a team and all like this? I thought it was great, right? Really good. So I'd recommend doing that again with other teams in the future. Not to take credit for it. I didn't drive it, but so I wonder, are there things that we can do like on an ongoing basis, like just like that, celebrating the success, trying to keep snapshots of befores and after, like being proactive about it. Say, as if you're doing workshops or something at the start of a project, capture loads of photos and try and remember that, or timestamp them, or stick them in Google Photos or whatever, and then bring them back up again to the team later. Do things like that. Like, here's where we were before. Remember this, because we're all in the grind. You're kind of like going through all the details. It's very hard when you're like almost like in total first person view to remember there's a wider team and there's a wider mission, and you've actually moved things along. And I think maybe the things like that we can do to just remind our teams and remind ourselves. Oh, actually, something else you said that reminded me is around the praise, or getting recognition. I think that's really important. I like recognition. I think most people respond well to it. Like, they kind of, even if they get a bit embarrassed at the time, I think it's a really good thing to do. And obviously everyone's different, right? So some people don't like being called out, and especially having to give speeches or any of that type of stuff. But I think if it's kind of like giving recognition is very important. And you reminded me when you're saying that around I remember reading on Twitter or something somewhere before, where someone was saying basically that they capture all the nice things people say about them, and they save it in a folder or on a Pinterest page or something like that. And I thought that was a really nice idea, because you get nice feedback from people. Someone sends you a nice message on Slack or whatever, or reply, thanks very much, and X, Y, and Z. Or even not so long ago, I remember someone was moving on to another company, and they sent me like a really nice message privately that was like really like some of the nicest things, some of the nicest compliments I've ever received, actually. And I'd like to keep that. So I think it's a good idea to try and keep those positive moments and keep them somewhere. And then if you're feeling a bit down or whatever, or even just you just want to have a look again, it's nice to remember things and go, wow, that was, there are moments there where you have an impact on people, or things are going quite well. Yeah,
just imagine like having those positive things. I mean, it's obviously it's feeding like your own ego, I guess, in a way, but at the same time, like it's just good. It's just how we work. It's how we're wired. Like if you said to me, Craig, you're one of my favorite people in the world, I would say, oh wow, Tom, that's so nice, and I would write it down and I'd stick it on the wall. And then every morning, just imagine I come here and see, oh, Tom thinks I'm one of his favorite people in the world. That's incredible. Like, despite all of the,
someday I'll say that to you.
I'll keep working for that. But even bad things will happen, but to have those as reminders, obviously, like are important.
I think it's kind of like, from my perspective, it's kind of like ego is definitely in there, right? But ego has a bad connotations. Everyone kind of just says like, don't have egos and stuff like that. But I don't think it's impossible for us to have no ego, right? there's an ego there in some way or another. But I think it's also like what is the fuel that drives us? Do you know? So there's. I know everyone's a bit different. I don't know. Like from my perspective, like I like the idea of working on transformative projects. You know, starting somewhere, and when you towards the end or as you go along, you're making a big difference, right? So that's like the actual change, the actual improvement of things is a motivator for me. But also, yeah, it's nice to be able to, you know, in the back of your mind, you're kind of like, and people will recognize this, you know, like people won't. It's going to be hard not to go, wow, this is a big change. Well done to the team, which, you know, you're part of the team as well. It can be thought of as a negative thing, but I think of it as just more fuel. You know, it helps to fuel you, keeps you energized and engaged, and drives you forward, I think, to keep doing a good job. Because it's being recognized.
I guess I don't really see much of a negative in this recognition of other people's, you know, obviously, like it can't be hollow. You can't be praising people for not doing it, because then it'll all be seen as just, oh, that person likes to praise everybody for whatever
that's
reason.
Important, actually. Should be sincere.
So as long as it's genuine,
it needs to feel sincere and genuine.
So actually, you know, in the article, I pulled out a few of those kind of key moment creators. One of them is this recognition of others, but there are more. I'll just maybe kind of quickly mention each one, and then if we have any thoughts on them. But the first one is breaking the script, or one of them is breaking the script. And this is just changing the day-to-day. So the monotony of the day. If you're able to break that monotony with something different, it is a possible area that you can create moments. So, you know, plan a workshop to bring in new teams that have never really done something like that. You know, that could be an opportunity to create a moment, or think about how to change some repetitive meeting with some new activity that gets everybody involved or makes it less boring. Things just, whatever that is, just about changing the monotony up. Tripping over the truth is one you know maybe have heard outside of the context of this book, but it's allowing people to arrive at their own kind of understanding of something. Maybe you've architected in a way, and not in a way that's sort of manipulative, but in a way that sort of allows them to see a new perspective by arriving at it themselves. So like if me and you had very different kind of perspectives on some design, let's say, I was obviously right, you were obviously wrong, and maybe I had, let's say in this scenario, you were wrong based on your kind of strong opinion that wasn't based in reality. I was right based on some grounding in reality and research and things like that. But for me telling you, because you're such a stubborn mule, like that's not going to get you over the line. It's not going to get you to see things. Just me telling you why you're wrong. If I sort of create an environment where you can arrive at that yourself, you know, it's obviously like there's a whole thing about, in our family at least, about, I feel like my wife does it with me, I do it with her, we do it with our son, about like making the person think it's their idea and then they agree to it. Like I'm sure this is a pretty common tactic, but it's essentially the same kind of idea, is you know, creating the space for that person to find the truth. The idea is it is the truth. It's not manipulating them to find some thing that just because you want it.
I think that's important, because it does sound like manipulation, and I can feel like manipulation at times, but in my experience, when it works well, is maybe that person just doesn't have the full picture. So they're making a judgment on their perspective. So by just putting those perspectives in front of them, they arrive logically. It's a logical conclusion that they're coming to. And a lot of the time that's kind of like based on like user insights. Maybe they're not thinking about, you know, that kind of thing. So you kind of go, well, here's what our users actually need. Here's, you know, and then their kind of frame of mind changes a bit. Oh, okay, it's not about me. It's not about this business need. There is actually someone else. You know, so X, Y, and Z. So it's not. I like to think that it's not manipulating. It's more like just like opening someone's eyes and taking them on the journey with you. So you both arrive, or everyone arrives logically at a solution that's optimal.
I think it's key, the word truth in that, tripping over the truth. It's not trip over my opinion. It's trip over the truth, and truth has to be grounded in something real. And truth is a tough word now, but still, it's like, let's say it's based in something a little more rigorous than I think this way.
Evidence-based.
So that's one. So evidence-based. Stretching for insight, and this is one that's really about kind of encouraging people to go beyond maybe their comfort zone, to stretch a little bit. You know, if you manage somebody, or let's say if you work on another team of somebody and you see that they're sort of they're limiting themselves maybe, and they're not kind of pushing out, you know, allow them, or try to create an environment where they can stretch, or can kind of be comfortable stretching beyond those bounds, or even kind of, you know, nudge them in that direction so that they do stretch. Because, you know, once somebody stretches and they're successful in it, even if they fail, but whatever, if they're successful in it, that creates like huge memory. Like, oh, this was a time I went from this level to this level because, you know, this person kind of nudged me, but I did it. You know, I moved to this level, and like that's a transition. Like that could be a transition in their career from a mid-level to a senior level or something.
Yes.
You know, who knows?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So the last one here is about creating shared meaning. This may be kind of what I was referring to before with that big 2-day event we did. But really it's about, you know, it's sort of a team or company culture kind of a thing, but it's creating kind of a coherence in that group.
Yeah.
You know, you think of, for example, kind of design principles. If we had a design team and I, you know, as the big boss came and said, these are our 5 design principles, here they are documented, you know, case closed.
Yeah.
It's a very different scenario than we're going to go on a journey together and figure out and investigate and, you know, hash out and try to understand what these principles should be and why should they be those things. Through that process, you're creating shared meaning, and you're creating kind of investment from all of the individuals on that team to say, yeah, we actually give a shit about these. Like, we actually care about these principles. Something like that is an example of potentially a way to create shared meaning. But that can be within your team, with other teams. Really, you know, it's really just kind of a framework, kind of bounds to think within. Where is meaning lacking, and where can you help create it as an individual, or as a team? So those are the kind of high level things that I've extracted from the book that I think are kind of important for designers to be thinking about impact in the places they work. You know, in addition to all of those other impacts of end products and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, good stuff there. I think there's a lot that people can actually use there and leverage. I think one of the things that I've had to kind of learn over time is trying to like think about it, bring the team along with you, bring people along with you. Don't just do a solo run, because you can internally feel like you're hitting these things, and you're optimizing things, or, you know, I think it's always better when whoever the stakeholders are, or whatever the team you're working on, if you have these kickoffs, that everyone's on the same page. If you kind of like go along and basically remind each other of what you're trying to do, and it's a journey together, really, as opposed to several different people going in a similar direction but not really aligned, because that's alignment is important, I think. So yeah, good points in there. Yeah.
I mean, it's a topic I think is really interesting. I'd love to hear anybody's thoughts on it, their experiences on it. I mean, the main kind of closing word is just that, like we said before, these can be big things, they can be little things. They don't require financial investment necessarily. Like, they're just, some of them are just kind of behavior changes or things to be aware of how you can have more impact on the environment in which you work. But yeah,
cool.
I do suggest reading the book if this topic interests you. It's a good
Sounds like a good
read.
One. Yeah, I'll give it a go.
It's a memorable read.
Ah, very good, very good.
Yeah.
Great stuff. Will we wrap it up there?
Let's wrap it up. I think I've talked enough today.
Okay, so where can people find you online?
I'm on Twitter at CP5446. That should be good.
Cool.
How about yourself, Tom?
Yeah, Tom C Design on Twitter. Tom Cunningham on LinkedIn as well. So we'll wrap it up there. So thanks very much for listening. As we usually say, if you can like and subscribe and share with any friends or colleagues that you think would be interested in what we talk about, and also reach out to us as well if you have some ideas around some topics that you'd like us to talk about as well.
Yeah, it'd be great to hear from everybody. Cool. All right.
Thanks,
Tom. Have a good one.
Bye bye.
See you.